Just wait just a second to get a few more people on, and then we'll get started. Okay, good morning. Welcome to our second NEHA-FDA Retail Flexible Funding Model Grant Program Seminar online. We're thrilled with the amount of turnout we have for today. We have over 200 people here. I just want to give you a couple reminders before we get started. Please put your questions in the chat box as we go through the presentation, and we'll work to answer them at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded and will be placed on the NEHA website. And right now, I just want to turn it over to Mary Beth Neeson from the FDA.
I just wanted to take a minute to welcome you all to this webinar and to encourage you all to participate in this grant project. Some of you on the call probably have participated before. Some of you may be new to the process. So I encourage all of you all to apply for the opportunity to get some grants to assist you with your retail program standards as you move through them. The one thing I would also encourage you to do is if you have any questions, concerns, you're not exactly sure how to maneuver some of these things, even after today's great webinar, I encourage you to reach out to the National Environmental Health Association. Art will give you the information after I turn it over to him on where you can do that between phone numbers and emails so that you can get some assistance if you need that. But we're glad to have you here. We look forward to you applying. And Art, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and welcome everyone. We're excited you're here and excited that we've got 2 weeks more of the portal being open, and we'd love to give you kind of the up-to-the-minute information, including how to ask questions, where to go for more information, etc. This is a repeat of the PowerPoint that we've done a couple times, but there's always different questions asked. So if you're here for a second or third time, hopefully you'll gain something from it. But this presentation is already posted on the NEHA.org website. And again, like I said, we'll tell you exactly where that is. But without further ado, we want to get into our presentation. And we'll talk about, I do want to just again highlight at the very beginning what the retail program standards is all about. And this is beyond the grant program. The goal of all of this funding, the goal of the Retail Program Standards Grant Program and of the Retail Program Standards themselves is inspectional uniformity and consistency for the grant program, and really for the Voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program Standards, which is the FDA-based program. This is true too, inspectional uniformity and consistency at your own pace. Depending on the needs and the challenges of your particular jurisdiction, which we also know can change from year to year. It's also about relationships with other jurisdictions, local, regional, state, local, tribal, and territorial networks. Again, if you get involved with this program, you're going to be rubbing shoulders with other people involved in the program. And again, that goes for both the grant program and the undergirding FDA Voluntary National Retail Program Standards Grant Program. I know I bumbled that one, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But again, it's about relationships. It's about enabling you guys through funding, through opportunities, meetings, etc., to assist each other. We think if our grants enable you all to work together more effectively and share information, everybody wins. And it's meant to be inclusive. Any registered food protection jurisdiction is welcome. Again, we're open to states, locals, tribes, and territories that have a registered food protection jurisdiction. We'll talk about what registration means in just a bit. And it's also about building the integrated food safety system. That's an exciting concept, and I think it's no better spotlighted than in a grant program like this, where you have federal funding and federal oversight working through national associations to help states, locals, tribes, and territories. And I think, as you know, just because it's a numbers game, the preponderance of grants and funding end up going to the smallest, to the local, tribe, and territorial level, just because there are so many of you all. So let's talk a little bit about the grant program. We do know it hasn't been perfect. We know there have been some challenges in year one. We've improved a lot of those as we got into year two, and a lot of you are already grantees in year two, which is CY 2023. But we've also continued to listen to your feedback, apply it, and we think some of the pinch points have really been fixed for year three for CY 2024 grants, and we're excited in this webinar to talk about some of those changes. We're about continuous improvement, just as we know you are. Again, the grant program is about funding to enable and incentivize the good work of working through the retail program standards. We want it to be accessible to all, transparent and fair. We really work hard that if a decision is made, that same decision is made no matter who is asking it. We also, and this is where we've aimed a lot of the improvements for CY 2024, we want this to be a program with a low administrative burden, and we really think we've made some great strides at that as we get ready to open up for CY 2024. And again, we'll talk about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the basics, and the longer I go through the presentation, the more detail you'll get. But by the end, hopefully you'll have all the detail you need. And if you have questions, we're going to have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So some things about the program remain the same. It is the retail program standards. You have to enroll with the FDA, Voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program Standards. So if you don't know what that is, you can look up that acronym. You can find an FDA website. You can also find links to the Voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program Standards information on the NEHA.org/retail grants website. And again, the first thing you need to do to get funding is enroll in the undergirding FDA program. Again, the Voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program Standards. Once you do that, you can go ahead and register in the grant program itself. And again, that's at NEHA.org/retail-grants, but retail grants works as well without the dash. Either one will work. But what you're seeing in front of you is the official website. And again, everything you need to walk you through registration steps, the dual registration with both FDA and with the grant program are outlined on the site. Really easy. Both of those steps can be accomplished very, very quickly in a couple days. Actually, the grant program registration is usually done pretty much instantaneously. You'll register, you'll probably hear from us, and your registration would be connected within a half hour at the most in most cases during this time of year. The registration with FDA, once you've submitted the paperwork, you can consider yourself registered and move on to registration with the grant program. If you're already registered, if you've either applied for a grant or you've gotten a grant, either one, even if you applied and did not get a grant, or applied, got a grant and canceled it, you're already registered in the grant program. So you can go through the grant portal, reset your password if needed, reach out if you need help, but you can get in there and start your applications as soon as you're ready, if you're already registered. The registration with FDA is once and done. So as long as your registration is active, as long as you have not canceled it, you're good to go there too. Some things that remain the same include that you're going to have a full year grant performance period. So the applications need to be in by October 11. You'll see that date in a minute. That's 2 weeks from today. But if you win a grant, you are going to have you're going to get notified in early December, and you're going to have a full year to accomplish the goals of that grant, January 1 through December 31st, 2024. And again, just like last year, there are no new 3-year grants this year. We are on a 3-year grant cycle. NEHA has a 3-year cooperative agreement with FDA. We're in year 3 of 3. And so hopefully the program will continue, and you'll see some kind of 3-year grant opened in 2025. But all of that is dependent on all the different magical things that happen at the federal government level. So stay tuned on that one. And then I want to talk about some of the things that get better, that we think are better this year than years 1 and 2 of this program that NEHA has managed. Number one, last year we went, in year 1, everybody had to apply for multiple grants. In year 2, last year, we combined the track 1 grant so that if you were in track 1, one application would fund your base grant activities, It would fund you being a mentee if you wanted to do that, and it would fund your training options all through one application. That worked so well that we're doing the same thing this year with track 2. So for both track 1 and 2, you can get all of kind of the base activities in one grant. For track 1, that's all that you're eligible for in one place, and we'll talk about funding amounts and what you can do there in a little bit. But for track 2, you still can apply to a couple other grants, and we'll talk about that. But your base activities, working through the standards, becoming a mentee if you want, and then the whole gamut of training available for retail standards, all of that will be through your track 2 development base grant. So it'll be a little easier, actually a lot easier for both track 1 and track 2 this year. We've also made a change to how the funding works for track 1 and 2 for both the development base funding, for the mentee funding, and also even if you're in track 3 for mentor or mentee funding, we've converted the amounts to fixed award amounts. And this is kind of like the old program, the way it used to be. What that means is your payments will be based on deliverables met, and we'll talk about that. And that means there will be no receipts required for payments of those fixed deliverables. Now, some things will still require receipts, and by the end of this presentation, you'll know what will need budgets and receipts and what will not. We'll make that really clear. That's also in the grant guidance found on the NEHA website. And again, this presentation is out there already that you can download and look at the details as you want. The point here is, by applying this feedback we heard from you, we have significantly simplified this program's administrative burden. We think that's going to be a huge benefit to you all when you are closing your grants out, when it comes time for reimbursement. It's going to help NEHA be quicker on the management side of that and the approvals, and it's going to help FDA too. There's going to be a lot fewer questions. We're going to keep you guys focused on the work of the grants and not the administrative burden. So hopefully this will go really well, and we're going to talk about a few things that will keep you out of trouble with this new modality that we're moving into. So again, what's new for CY 2024? Getting into the more details a little bit. The fixed funding options and grants are new. So, and the fixed options are, again, going to be based on deliverables met. I'll cover that. But they include the track 1 development base grants. The base funding option and the mentee funding option are both fixed. The training part of track 1 still needs a budget and receipts. Track 2, same thing. The base funding is based on fixed amounts. The public health metric, if you're working on standard 9, that's going to be based on fixed amounts. And the mentee optional add-on is fixed amounts. The training, again, will still be need receipts and budgets, and we'll talk about that for track 2. And then if you're applying to be a mentor, or if you're applying to be a mentee and you're in track 3, all of that will be through the mentorship optional add-on grant, and that will be fixed funding. So everybody in every track has the potential to benefit from these changes, whether you're in track 1, track 2, or track 3. I want to talk a little bit about payments for the fixed funding options and grants. To receive payment at the end of the year, once you've met your deliverables, you will have specified deliverables that need to be met with a dollar amount tied to them based on your grant and your option. And payment will be based on the deliverables achieved for the project period. And you won't, just like you're not going to need a budget for those fixed components of the projects, you're not going to need receipts or anything like that. And your actual spending does not need to conform to the deliverables-based payment amounts. And that's going to be a lot more clear. But what that means, I'll give you a fundamental change that's going to mean. A lot of you have said, hey, we don't need a lot of salary dollars in our mentee grant, but we'd sure like to do extra training. Can we do that? And the answer so far has been no. But from now on, we're not asking, and you don't need to tell us what you're doing with the funds. So you're going to get a bucket of funding, a couple different buckets of funding to be a mentee, and you can spend that money whatever way that helps your jurisdiction, wherever your needs lie. And what we're doing by doing this is there's kind of been totally unintentional, but there's been a bias towards people that need salary dollars. And it's been really easy for you guys to spend some of your funding for the base grants and the mentorship grants. But for those who don't need salary dollars, it was a little harder to spend some of that money. We're going to now let you spend the money as needed, and we're going to talk about ways to keep you out of trouble on that, like I said, so more to come on that as we go through the presentation. Again, you're free to expend funds as determined by your unique needs, with the only requirement for payment for those fixed grants being confirmation that selected deliverables have been met. And we will check on that, and we'll talk about that as well. And this is how you stay out of trouble. For audit purposes, keep in mind that your spending must always adhere to applicable federal subaward grant funding rules. Just because FDA and NEHA are not asking about exactly how you spend your money, you're going to get audited at some point. And if you've spent your money on food, if you spent your money on building a new building, if you've spent your money on frivolous travel that's not aligned with the standards, you're probably going to get your hand slapped. You might have to return the money, depending on how that audit goes. So keep in mind, as long as your fixed funding and your spending is focused on moving through the standards, you're good to go. The thing about audits is you can do the wrong thing for quite a while, but it's eventually going to catch up to you. So just make sure you're really spending that money well. If you've ever got any questions, you can ask NEHA, and we might refer you to FDA. But again, if you're spending money that helps you meet your fixed goals, your fixed deliverable goals, you're going to be in good shape, even through an audit. So let's talk about what some of those fixed funding deliverables are. For if you're a mentee, and again, you can be a mentee if you're in track 1. It's included in your track 1 grant as an option. If you're in track 2, it's included in your track 2 grant as an option. If you're in track 3, you will become a mentee by choosing the mentorship grant and choosing the mentee option. If you achieve the retail program standards goals that you've outlined in your grant application, we'll ask you to report on that. You will get $8,000 of the funding available for mentee, and there's a total of $14,000 available as a mentee. If you achieve the goals you stated in your application, and we confirm that, you'll get $8,000. If you complete at least one site visit with your mentor, and that can be either in your jurisdiction or theirs, you'll get fixed funding of $3,000. If it costs you more than $3,000, that's fine, because you can use a portion of that $8,000. Again, these are fixed amounts. We're just looking that you meet the deliverables, and then you spend the money as needed. Again, if you buy first class tickets with that travel, with your travel allocation or your other allocation, you're going to get caught in an audit. Don't break any grant rules, but we're not going to be checking on that. We're going to let you suffer the consequences of abusing that funding if you so choose. We don't recommend it. And then last but not least, attending at the required year-end mentorship conference is also going to result in a payment of $3,000. That doesn't matter if you send either 1 or 2. I think you can send up to 2 to that meeting. Doesn't matter how much you spend. Again, if you do all 3 of these things, you're going to get a fixed payment of $8,000 plus $3,000 plus $3,000, which is $14,000. That's how this grant's going to work. That's how the mentee portion is going to work. If you at the last minute you're planning on going to the year-end meeting, but you've got to cancel, then you won't get the $3,000. You'll still get the $11,000. Same thing if you well, actually, you're going to meet your goals. If you only meet half of them, if you say we really tried, we only met half our goals, we're going to be fair with you. You'll still get half of that payment. All of any changes will be worked out with the particular situation of the grantee. But if you complete the deliverables, which 90% of our mentees do, you're going to get that full fixed funding payment. Again, maximum fixed funding of $14,000. And again, this is available to any applicant, whether in track 1, 2, or 3. Mentor is the same exact idea. Your deliverables are, if you're a mentor, for helping your mentees, you get fixed funding of $6,000, no matter how many mentees you have. That's your base funding. If your mentees, if you have multiple mentees and they complete the program, you're going to get fixed funding of $3,000 per mentee, That means if you have 5 mentees, that's another 15,000 on top of the 6. And we're not looking to penalize you. If you help a mentee all year long and they drop out at the last minute and they don't finish, the mentor is still going to get their funding. The mentee probably is not, but the mentor is. So this is all about trying to put incentives in there, not only for the mentee to finish their work, but we want to put an incentive for the mentor to help them finish. And that's what this is all about. And again, it's not a gotcha thing. It's an incentive thing. And we are going to be fair to you at the end of the year. The other thing is you get the same 3,000 to attend the year-end meeting. Again, whether you send 1 or 2 people, you don't have to give us receipts for this travel. Other travel you do, but for this travel you do not. And again, if you do everything required, you're going to get maximum fixed funding from 12,000 for if you have 1 mentee to 24,000 for 5 mentees. And I have noticed we've got a good number of mentor applications in there already. I'm seeing that a lot of you are choosing to take on more mentees, and we're really excited about that because that's been a shortcoming that we'll talk about a little bit more. We've never yet had enough mentors to cover all the mentees, and we're hoping that really changes this year. And we're hoping that the administrative burden that's going to be taken away by operating this way is going to give you guys the courage to do more help of mentees. So fingers crossed on that, and we'll see how it turns out. But this is to be a mentor, you have to be in track 2. If you want to be a mentor in track 2, you will say no in your base grant to the mentee option, but then you will open up a separate mentor application, choose the mentor choice, and become a mentor. For track 3, you will choose that add-on mentorship grant, and you will choose the mentor option. Once again, that hasn't changed. You can either be a mentee or a mentor, not both. So, and we'll be screening for that in the application. Like if you're in track 2 and you say, I want to be a mentee, but you also put in a mentor application, we'll be calling you and asking you during the administrative review which one you want to cancel, because you can do either or, not both. All right, fixed funding for mentors. And again, I won't go through this in detail, but this is how it gets calculated. If you've got 1 mentee, you get the 6,000 base. You get 3,000 for attendance at the year-end meeting, and then you get 3,000 for the successful completion of your 1 mentee. The only thing that changes as the number of mentees go up is the successful completion number goes from 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 to 15, depending on the number of mentees that you have. And again, if you're spending a significant time on a mentee and they drop out, we're going to fairly compensate you for that help. So don't let that be a concern for you if you're thinking about being a mentor. We want to emphasize, become a mentor for CY 2024. If all you are good at is helping people complete an SA9 and a CSIP, we'd love you to be a mentor for that as long as you're in track 2. But again, you are going to, as part of your mentorship application, you're going to tell us what you feel like you're ready to be a mentor on, and we're going to match you with the right type of jurisdiction. So we really hope to see additional mentors for 2024. And like I said, so far, we're really seeing that happen. So we're excited about that. All right, so here are the opposite side of the fixed grants are the traditional reimbursements, the grants that you still need to create a budget worksheet and that you will need to keep receipts on. That includes your track 3 maintenance and advancement base grants. Those are 3-year grants. Those will not change. So it's going to be the same. Hopefully you've all learned some lessons in year 1. Year 2 will be a little easier, but your reimbursement for track 3 maintenance and advancement base will be the same. Your reimbursement for capacity building, again, that's a 3-year grant. Those reimbursements will be exactly the same. Your training funds, whether you do a training optional add-on for track 1 or 2, you will need to do a budget for that in your training optional add-on in track 1 and track 2. And if you're in track 3 and using the training optional add-on grant, you will need to do a budget for that, and you will need receipts for that. So, and again, remember that I said the mentorship travel is separate because of the way that's structured, but for your training optional add-ons, whether that's in a track 1 or track 2 grant, or whether that's a training optional add-on grant for track 3, you do need a budget for that in your application, and you will need to keep receipts. So again, we'll entertain questions. And special projects, you will also, because those are very different types of projects, you're going to need to have both a budget in your application and traditional receipt-based reimbursement at the end of the year. And again, that pretty much hasn't been an issue for the bigger grants or the special projects, but the training grants, as you know, there's a little bit of a detail needed for that. So giving a little bit more detail, starting to roll everything together, looking at globally at a Track 1 development-based grant, deliverables and funding. Track 1 is for newly enrolled jurisdictions, or if you've let your enrollment lapsed, you're restarting. It's really for newbies trying to do an SA9 and a CSIP, a comprehensive strategic improvement plan. And I won't use acronyms. That's Track 1 requires you to do both a self-assessment of all 9 standards and a comprehensive strategic improvement plan. For those of you who have a valid and up-to-date self-assessment of all 9 standards, but not a CSIP, what we would encourage you to do is work quickly. There's a lot of tools out there. Even in 2 weeks, you could finish a CSIP. And what we'd encourage you to do is do that so that you can jump into Track 2 and have a lot more options available. So if that's you, if you've got a CSIP, if you've got an SA9 but not a CSIP, we've been saying that in the guidance, we've been saying that in the webinars, you really should, if you've got a valid SA9 self-assessment of all 9 standards, you really should be moving into Track 2, and it's not too late if you don't have that CSIP done. You can do a quick one, and then you can update that during the year as you learn more, and you can get help to do that as a mentee if you want. So again, really consider that. Track 1 really should be new people starting or people that need to restart because they've lost staff. That's what that's for. Within Track 1, it's the only grant application you need to do if you're in Track 1. You are going to complete both a comprehensive strategic improvement plan and a self-assessment of all 9 standards. That could also be a redo of a self-assessment of all 9 standards if yours is out of date. But that's the required deliverable to be in Track 1. You'll get fixed funding of $5,000 for that. And if that's all you want to do, that's fine. You'll get a $5,000 grant and you'll be able to do that. If you want to be a mentee, if you want help, you can get a fixed funding of $14,000 and get the help you need for that. And if you want to do training, the only training available for Track 1 is you can send up to 2 staff members to in-person self-assessment and verification audit workshops. If those dates have not been announced, they will be imminently, but you can get up to $7,500 for that. You will need a budget for that, and you will need to justify that budget. You'll be in reimbursement on that based on receipts, but the rest of your grant will all be fixed funding. And again, if you're not going to send 1 or 2 staff members to an in-person self-assessment and verification audit workshop, know that there are free virtual versions that are going to be offered, and know that there is a self-paced kind of modular version that you can sign up for and anybody can do. So you may not need any training funding if you don't need any training funding unless you're going to do this face-to-face. That is pretty competitive. So I would, if you're planning on going to a face-to-face seminar, I would not only apply for the funding, but I would keep your ear to the ground, check the website often. I know NEHA will probably send out an alert once the registration's open for those, but register for those as soon as you can because they do fill up quickly. Total possible funding for Track 1 is $26,500 with 19 of that as fixed funding. So again, keep in mind, this is the same amount of money available last year, but now you only need a maximum of $7,500 worth of receipts. Everything else is fixed. So that's going to make the administrative burden significantly easier for y'all. All of this is through a single application. Again, in Track 1, this is the only application you're eligible for. If you're in Track 2, that means you have a self-assessment of all 9 standards that's current, meaning it's been done in the last 5 years. It also means that you've got a CSIP. Even if it's a down and dirty, quickly completed CSIP that you're going to update, you've got that attached to your application. Once those 2 things are accomplished, you can apply for Track 2. You can do continuous improvement on standards 1 through 8 and get fixed funding for that. Most of our grantees, just so you know, we do know the program is going to be, we already see a lot of grants in the pipeline. It's going to be very competitive. On average, Track 2 grantees have met and audited 2 standards on average in the last couple of years. That doesn't mean it's required. You've just got to be working on at least 1 standard, but just know if it gets competitive, on average, people have been meeting and auditing 2 standards. A lot of people have been doing more than that, but you've got a lot of variability. If you want to work on a lot and audit a few, I mean, there's a lot, you've really got carte blanche at working through these first 8 standards. But no, you'll get fixed funding of $5,000. Take on, you know, we want you to take on what you think you can handle, but just know that it's competitive. And again, I'm telling you what the averages are, and that may or may not matter. You also are eligible if you choose to work on Standard 9 in pursuit of a public health metric. And there's a lot of different options, from starting your first work on Standard 9 to finishing and auditing Standard 9. Different options are there. You'll get fixed funding, whatever you choose to do. You will get fixed funding of $5,000. So if you choose to work on both Standards 1 through 8 and Standard 9, that's fixed funding of $10,000. You can get $14,000 in fixed funding if you choose to be a mentee. And again, you can get the training optional add-on and ask for all of the different retail food safety training, conference, and workshops that are out there, and get up to $7,500. You can send as many people as that will cover to training. There's a lot of training out there. There are regional things you can do as well, as long as it's targeted towards retail food safety. It's more than likely going to be approved. And again, this is a great incentive to get into Track 2. If you're on the cusp and you can jump into Track 2, you have a lot more training available to you. Overall, there's more funding available, and the total possible funding is $31,500, with $24,000 of that available as fixed funding. So again, a lot easier to manage than the last year. This would have been 3 grants to manage with up to $31,500 in receipts. It's gotten a whole lot easier for Track 2. Again, all of this is through a single application, and the only budget that you need to attach to this application is your training optional add-on budget. Track 3, maintenance and advancement base grantees. This is a little easier. You're going to continue to work on your objectives. No application is needed. That's a 3-year grant. You are eligible for the mentorship optional add-on grant, and you can choose to be either a mentor or either a mentee or a mentor through that grant. And you can also put in a training optional add-on grant as a standalone grant and ask for up to $7,500. The only people that should be doing this training optional add-on grant are Track 3 maintenance and advancement base grantees. This same exact funding and options are available to Track 2 applicants as part of your base grant. And if we see any mistakes during the administrative review, we'll help you correct those. You're also eligible for a special projects optional add-on grant, traditional reimbursement of $20,000. Again, you need a budget for that. Again, this is highly competitive. I think we gave a fewer than 10. I think we gave 9 or 10 for the past 2 years. That's probably the best case scenario for 2024. But if you've got a great idea, feel free to go for it. And I know FDA is really looking for projects that move forward the integrated food safety system. If it also really progresses the retail program, retail program standards, so much the better. And I know that what's been really favorable are those projects that have an impact greater than just your jurisdiction, those that maybe have a regional or a citywide or a statewide impact. Those are the ones that really get reviewed quite well. So just a few tips for you. Total possible additional funding, if you were a Track 3 grantee and you put in to be a mentor with 5 mentees, you put in a full training application, a special project application, that would be up to $51,500 with the mentor portion as fixed funding. The rest would be traditional. Again, if you're in maintenance advancement base, no need to redo your maintenance and advancement base grant. If you've got a capacity building grant, no need to redo that, but you are eligible for 3 separate grants as optional add-ons. And in advance, and I'll go through the rest pretty quickly, but these are really more, it'll get more comprehensive as we go, but really this is about giving you a one-stop visual resource. And again, this is already on the website, the NEHA.org website, but advance payments are still an option for all grant types, even fixed grant types. Just keep in mind that if you get fixed funding but don't meet all your deliverables, you're going to have to refund some or all of that funding at the end of the year. That's always painful. So if you're going to take an advance payment, be pretty darn sure that you're going to be able and ready to meet those objectives. That'll be easier for everybody in the long run. But if you need the funding up front, it is available for you no matter what your grant type. And I think that's all we have to say about that. Application tips for each funding grant. Number 1, show you understand the work required to complete an SA9 and a CSIP. Don't just say we want to do an SA9 and a CSIP. Show us that you know what that means. Show us that you know what the work entails. And also it wouldn't hurt to outline your future goals. Hey, this year we want to do this, but that's going to set us up to do this next year, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the kind of things that are going to help your track 1 application score well. It should be all about the retail program standards. In track 2, give us detailed plans about your measurable progress with standards 1 through 8. Strongly consider beginning your work towards a public health metric, entering into standard 9. No matter where you are, if you've got your CSIP done and a self-assessment of all 9 standards, you can start work on standard 9. Most of you are ready for that. So if you're not, that's fine. But if you are, consider it. And also consider using the FDA risk factor study model for standard 9 and put that in your grant. All of those things are going to help the reviewers really have a good feel for what you're trying to do, they're going to be able to know it aligns with the goals of the program and that they're going to see real progress. And as I said, you should probably think about working on at least a couple standards, maybe more, and maybe even finishing and auditing a standard or 2. For track 3, link your optional add-on requests with meeting and exceeding your RPS goals. Even though those are in a vacuum, you're putting out these optional add-ons, help us understand how that's going to help you meet the goals of your maintenance and advancement based grant, meet the goals of your capacity building grant. The more you link your different grants together and tell us how the different parts make a whole for you that meets the goals that the FDA wants you to meet, those are the things that are going to help your whole package score well. And then again, all grants, you're noticing some commonality. Really hone in on what you're doing to meet the goals of the retail program standards. Link progress with past and future goals in your and link that to your CSIP. Move the RPS needle, the retail program standards needle, locally, regionally, statewide, and nationwide, and explain how all the grants you have and are requesting will help you meet those goals. Again, all about the standards. We do understand the challenges you face, and we want to say thank you. You guys have done a lot of hard work. Even with failures, you've learned lessons, you've lost staff, but you've kept going. And we really hope that we've helped you. We want to help you even more. And thank you for your oh so important work during the pandemic. We all thought things would get easier post-pandemic. In a lot of ways for public health, they have not. And we really appreciate what you do and wanted to say thank you. And we also wanted to say thank you for being a part of this program. We love running it. We love helping you succeed. That's what gets us out of bed in the morning. So thank you. Keep it up. And just to summarize, and again, so you see it all in one place, track 1, this shows you all the different things, what's fixed, what's traditional, all through a single application. If this is you, this is one slide you want to be looking at. For track 2, same thing, all the different options, what's fixed, what's not. The additional grants you can apply for beyond your track 2 base grant is outlined here. Again, this is a one-stop visual for you if you're in track 2 or want to be in track 2 or have been encouraged now to move into track 2. And then track 3, same thing, a one-slide picture of everything you need to know for a Track 3 grantee. And with that, I'll close with this slide and we'll go to the Q&A. But again, you've got 2 weeks from today to get an application finished and submitted. That's easily achievable. So go ahead. The only hang up that might slow you down is if you don't have your CSIP done. You've got some fast work ahead of you, but that is still achievable. Reach out to us as needed at NEHA. Reach out to your retail food specialist and do what you can. But you've got 2 weeks to get those applications in and submitted. Again, if you need help, here's the email address to reach the NEHA-FDA Retail Flexible Funding Model Grant Program Support Team. Here's our toll-free number. We know a lot of you know this email and number because we've been getting a lot of calls and emails, and we're doing our best to help you quickly. And we want you to know that the full CY 2024 grant guidance is also posted on the NEHA website that I think we have on the next slide. So again, and again, you saw it earlier, but it's neha.org/retail-grants for that website. So without further ado, we'll go to the Q&A portion, and I'll hand the talking over to Joe.
Okay, Art, we've got a few questions, and some of them we answered on our last presentation, so we'll get to answer them again. And a lot of really good questions. So the first question has to do with the first two questions have to do with travel for training. So if not addressed in the presentation, how do we include the travel location and dates for events that are not yet scheduled, i.e. SAVA? The second question goes right along with this. And are there 2024 dates and locations set for the SAVA workshops? And is there pricing information available for registration? And just the statement that they're trying to build out their training add-on budget, but it's difficult without the information.
I'm going to kick that to Rance, who maybe knows the most that can be shared, and I'll share some generic. We can definitely help you even generically, but Rance, what? And I don't know if Mary Beth is the better one to answer that.
So the dates themselves, hi everybody, I'm Rance from NEHA, and I also work on this program. The dates have not been formally established yet for the SAVA workshops, but it is noted that they will be pre-conferences for the NEHA AEC and the AFTO AEC. Whether there's other ones that will be available or not, that's still to come. So while we don't have the dates on that, you can count on that, and you know, I'm going to kick it back over to Art on this, but also if things change, all you need to do is put the change request in there. You're not tied into to something that didn't occur the way you thought it was going to occur. So we're very flexible on the training.
Yep. Yeah, and what I would say just generically is number one, we have posted all the dates we know about, including the dates for the NEHA conference and the AFTO conference. So based on how long the seminar is, based on those dates, you can probably make an estimated guess at where your travel is, what it is for the SAVA. And again, whenever I'm estimating, I always estimate a little high because in case the travel ends up being more than I think. But again, estimates are fine. But they should be educated estimates based on the information you know. Some of the FDA training is not posted yet. Some of it is. A lot of the conference information is out there. And if you go to the retail grants, the neha.org retail-grants website, on the left side, there's program resources. If you click on that, there is a bunch, there's a link on that program resources page with a bunch of conference dates and different dates that we know about. And that's the best place to know. As soon as we know official dates, we will post them. But an estimate's fine. And that's the other thing with training grants. If it was going to be approved during the season, it will be approved as a change. So if you wanted to go, if you were going to try to go to the NEHA conference and take part in the SAVA workshop, but it turns out you can't do that because of dates and you have to go to the AFTO one, changes like that are going to be approved. And again, if one of the trainings that you thought was going to be offered is not offered, but there's a similar retail training or just another retail training on that kind of pre-approved list, you can make that switch. So don't just leave it generic. Don't say TBD. Give us your best guess at, we want to send these people to these trainings, but know that of all the grants that can be changed, these are the easiest ones to change. The only thing we can't change is we can't give you more money. So that's why I say when you're using estimates, estimate a little high, because if you ask for 6,000 and you say we have a change and now it's going to be 7,500, that's the one change we will not be able to do. We'll be able to change the trainings for you, but we won't be able to change the amount.
And Carol noted in the SAVA workshop is 2.5 days, so plan on it that way. I also want to point out to everyone that this is the first year in a while that FDA is actually doing some face-to-face trainings. There's not a lot out there. There's still a lot of virtual, which, there's no training dollars attached to that because there's no cost attached to that. But with the face-to-face trainings, make sure you look at those. My guess is those are going to be competitive as well. Some of them might be closed just because of where they are. But definitely look at that and feel free to put that in. Again, track 1, only do the SAVA. That's all you can do. So that's why it makes most sense that if you can get past the track 1, get your SA9 and get your CSIP in place there and move to track 2, the opportunities for training resources are much greater for you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Rance. Thank you, Carol, too.
Yes, very nicely done. The next question is, if we are currently in the process of working on our CSIP, but our SA9 is complete, can we still apply for a track 2 grant?
I'm going to say, and I'm going to let Mary Beth correct me if she thinks this is different, but I would say we want to see a complete CSIP. So sketch out, if you're partially done, sketch out the rest, attach what you have, and you can apply for track 2. The other scenario, some of you have an open grant that to do a CSIP and you're not done yet, and your grant goes to December 23rd. You can go ahead, apply, attach what you have, but then in your application say, hey, we're going to finish this and submit the finished version with our final report by December 31st. And what we're going to do is we're going to, if you score high enough to get awarded, you will get an award notice. You just can't start any work until you get that CSIP in, and we're going to work with you and track you till you get that CSIP in. So I would say yes, but like I said, show us that you do as much work as you can, show us what your plans are, and that will end up, that will get you into track 2. Mary Beth, anything that I said that you want to add on or caveat?
I would just say, the importance of the CSIP for anybody that's new to this process. The reason it's so important is because it sets your game plan for your jurisdiction with the staff that you have, the funding that you have, and all the things to move the needle forward, right? It's a game plan. And so we want to make sure that everybody has a game plan. You're not just sending people to this training, but they really don't need that training, but we can get funding, we can send people, so we're going to do it. We want to make sure you have a plan. So if you are actively working on doing your CSIP, funded, not funded, please let us know, right? When you apply, attach what you have, let us know that this will be completed by the end of the year, right? You have to have it done. If you are picked to be given an award, we're going to verify that, yes, in fact, you do have a CSIP completed, and then you will get the award. We're not just going to say, well, they did partially in September when they applied, and that was good enough. You need to go ahead and finish that work, okay? You need to make sure that you have that plan, because we will follow up on that. It's super important, and we find that people that do these CSIPs, that have a game plan to move themselves forward, really do accomplish a lot more with their time in this program, because they have a game plan, right? They're not trying to figure it out on the fly later. Oh, we said we're going to do standard 2, and now we're not real sure how we're going to do that, but we're going to figure this out later, and it just doesn't work out as well. So please sit down together with your staff, come up with your game plan of how you're going to address the gaps in your self-assessment, and go forward with your application process.
Mary Beth, I'll add to that, folks, make sure that your CSIP is reasonable. That it's something that it might take you years, it might take you 5 years, it might take you 6 years to make it through what it is you're going to make it through there. So make it realistic so that it's something that you can put together. I agree with Mary Beth that the folks who really put the effort into the CSIPs seem to be most comfortable in making the progress going forward there.
And Dr. R, you came on the screen. Did you have a comment you wanted to make? No, okay. And the final word on that I'll say is just remember, I agree 100%, of course, with everything that's been said. Your CSIP, however, is never done. We hope and encourage you to keep refining that. That doesn't mean we do a fake one and then say we're going to do a lot of stuff and back it down, but it means do the best estimate of what you can accomplish over the next few years in your CSIP. But once you get into it, you might say, hey, I can do more than that, or hey, that was a little aggressive. So it is a living document, and keep that in mind. And the other thing I want to make sure to say is there are some great tools that FDA put together that allow you to do a CSIP in a comprehensive way really quickly. And again, you do have, give us what you have by the 2 weeks from now, but you do have that little grace period where you can do some extra work and really refine that by the end of the year.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you very much. Great answers as well. The next is on Standard 9. So if we're collecting data and incorporating outreach for Standard 9 risk factor study, can this count as working towards Standard 9 in Track 2?
Take a look at Track 2, and I might let Rance and or Joe weigh in if there's some more deeper questions. But there are four. If you look at the Standard 9 option, the public health metric option, there are 4 different drop downs. I believe the first step is data collection, but just make sure, look at those 4 drop downs, figure out where you are, and actually they're not drop downs; they're the kind that you could be working on just one of those 4, or you could be working on all 4 at the same time. But just put in a project plan that matches those options, those steps that are out there. What we've tried to do with those 4 options available for the public health metric are to give from the start to the end. They give you the options of what needs to be done to meet Standard 9. We've also got a checkbox that says, by the end of the grant year, are you going to achieve and audit Standard 9 or not? So that's not a requirement. That's part of the picture too. But Rance, anything you would add to that?
The only thing I would add would be that just remember that the base Track 2 base grant is for standards 1 through 8. And so those are the ones that you're working on there. The Standard 9 is that public health metric, which was originally a risk factor study and still should be a risk factor study going towards Standard 9 there. But as you're putting your base grant together there, it's based on standards 1 through 8.
Yep. And in the Standard 9 part, and again, those are formulated different. You're going to tell us your plans for Standard 1 through 8, and then separately you'll tell us the plans for the public health metric. Just make sure you align with those 4 choices. And risk factor study is one of the choices. I believe data collection. I believe working on your data instrument. There's several good options, but again, the goal is whatever you need to do to meet FDA's goals for you for Standard 9. That's part of work on the public health metric.
I think the only thing I would add was make sure whatever you're doing on the 1 through 8 and for 9 as well is just to make sure what you're planning is attainable.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. So,
yep.
All right. The next one we answered in the presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and reiterate it. For fixed funding, do we track staff time since no receipts will be requested?
And what I would say as a grant, I've been a grantee like you. I'm a grant manager now. I would, but we're not going to ask you for it. I would keep track for your own records. But you are not going to have to give us pay stubs and stuff like that for your staff time. That's not true. Track 3 will still have to do that. Maintenance enhancement, base and capacity building, but for the base grants and for the mentorship grants, you will not have to give us your staff time. Again, consider doing it as a best practice. And then also, I just wanted to mention that I lost the thought. I have another thought there, but if I come around to it, I'll bring it up.
Okay, then we have a question. How can I obtain a list of nearby program participants? I'm guessing that would be for just the total retail program standards, but I'm not entirely certain. But there is a list on the FDA website of everybody that's enrolled in the retail program standards that's anybody can access. You would just have to Google the information, and it is there. Dr. Mike?
And it's posted on the there's a link on the NEHA website as well under program resources, Dr. R.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that we have it on our website as to who was a participant in year 1, year 2, and then on our website as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Mike and Art. Okay, so this one was asked and answered, but I'll go ahead and read off the question and the answer. In the track 1 budget worksheet, one of the cost categories is indirect costs. Can you please elaborate on what would be placed in the category? So Carol gave a good answer. Indirect costs are those expenses of doing business that cannot be identified with a particular project, grant, or agency activity. You can expense up to the federally allowable 10% of your total cost for indirect costs, or a greater amount if you have a signed indirect agreement for your agency. Do we need to add anything to that, Art or France?
Yeah. I'll say it, same thing, really simple. You can ask for your agreed upon, federally recognized, or in some cases, state recognized indirect rate. You can use that if it's a higher than 10%. But if you choose the 10% rate, they're assuming that that's all fine. I mean, there's no checks on that. Anybody can ask for 10% above their direct project costs and do it that way. That's always an option. And then you don't have to worry about what's included or not.
Okay, then we have, can we get a copy?
Dr. R, is your hand still up, or is that?
Yeah, I was going to say, just clarification on that. That would be only for the training grant in track 1, right? Because on the rest of it, if it's a lump sum, then it's included in there, your indirect, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It becomes a moot point probably for track 1 and track 2, to be honest, because that's going to be included in the fixed portions.
Yeah, because the only track that we're add-on that we're asking for detailed budget is the training. So on that one, you can put in indirect, but the rest of them
and special projects if you want to claim indirect, and obviously on your reporting for M&A base and for capacity building.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a good clarification.
Okay, I just got a message that we only have 3 minutes left. We can continue if we're willing to, or we can capture the additional questions through email.
I'm open to staying on longer. If folks need to get off, then they get off. But you know, especially if you got some questions in there, I'd like to get them answered.
Okay.
And this is recorded, so if you have to get off right at the top of the hour and you want to come back later, we'll have this recording posted as well.
Okay. And on that note, one of the questions was, can we get a copy of the presentation, or is it online? It'll be placed on our resources page on our website, so it will be available usually within 24 hours. And then we do take all of the questions that have been submitted, we answer those, and we place those online as well. So you'll have access to all of it.
And a lot of the same questions were asked last webinar. That stuff's already all up there, so you can get a head start if you want.
Yeah, and some of these questions aren't on there. Okay, so the next one is, so are we allowed to add training in the mentorship grant now?
Remember, it's a fixed grant, and so if training is your primary need, you can. We don't want to see it in the application. But that is something you could do with those funds. You get those funds based on deliverables met. We're going to pay you $8,000 to do the work that you outlined as a mentee. However you spend that is between you and probably your auditors at some point in the future.
And again,
I would say if you're going to do training, I would have personally, if I was the grant manager, I would make sure I would have my justification in place for how that helped me meet all the objectives in my grant. Dr. R, I see a hand up again.
Yes, I just want to say that, these are federal funds. So even if there's a lump sum payment, please follow the guidelines. There are federal guidelines or state guidelines or your local guidelines that allows you to spend the way the spending has to happen, regardless of what the projects are.
Yeah.
And I want to add on, just to make sure that folks know that that it is a deliverable that's driving everything. And if you're a mentee and you will work on deliverables that will be based on advancement of the retail program standards there, and that is what you'll be funded to deliver at the end of the program here. So don't put your training into that if you don't. Again, I guess that's my key point here is it's deliverable driven, and your deliverable will be based on the work you're doing towards advancement of the retail program standards.
Right. And Dr. Mike, you have your hand
Yeah,
up. Sir?
just to add to that, probably the mentorship is the most competitive grant of all of them, due to the limitation of number of mentors we have. So number one, if there's anybody on here who wants to be a mentor, please apply. So we can take on. So spend more time talking about what Rand said. What are you going to do in the mentorship program that's going to move the standards, and how are you going to work with NEHA and your mentor to do that particular part? That's what we're going to grade you on when we look at those applications.
And I want to just make one point to just emphasize why we're making this change. If you're a mentee and you live in the Washington, D.C. area and you're sending 2 people, you might be able to send them as a day trip with no cost. If you're in Seattle, Washington, those same 2 people might cost you $5,000. What we're trying to do is make it a fixed grant so that you can use the money as you need based on the particular needs of your jurisdiction. So I don't want to say a lot more than that, but that's the philosophy we're going to. If we find out a lot of people get in trouble with audits and that, we'll probably have to change this for the future. But this is, this is, again, trusting you that you know best what you really need to accomplish the goals of this program.
All right, that's a lot of really good information. So the next question we have is, this is the first year enrolled. Did you say that we need to upload a CSIP with our grant application?
CSIPs need to be attached to track 2 applications only. But whether you already sent it into us last year, hopefully you've updated it a little bit, add it again. If you're going in track 2, if you do not attach a CSIP to your track 2 application, you won't be able to submit. It's a required attachment.
Okay. Next question.
But only track 2.
But only track 2. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. If we plan on working on elements of standard 2 in 2024, are we able to use a portion of the $5,000 track 2 funding to supplement our training budget, since it directly relates to deliverables of standard 2?
Again, we're not going to ask a budget for that fixed amount, and so you're going to use your judgment again, focusing that money on what you need to meet your deliverables.
All right, and then we have a request to put the FDA website for various trainings. That we should have a link available on our website for that information. I know we have it for the SAVA courses. Okay, for track 2, you said funding is based on your goals. If you set goals to meet verification audits for 3 standards and only meet verification audits for 2 standards, but make progress on the other one, will you receive the fixed funding or a portion of it?
All of those decisions are going to be made on a case-by-case basis, but essentially, unless there's something really weird, the answer is going to be yes to that. I mean, what we're seeing, and we see another scenario a lot. We see, you said you were going to meet and audit 3 standards, but you failed one of the audits. You get full funding. I mean, what we're asking is that you really do your best to do what you said. And if there were contingencies that made you not able to do that, explain that, and reductions will be made rarely when needed. Dr. R, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly, that it's going to be individual based, and our goal here is to help you move the needle. So we're not going to punish you just because you couldn't get to a certain level because of certain issues. So,
and we don't want you to stretch yourself into pain or problems, but we want you, we want you to make progress. So don't be afraid to stretch, and no, we're not looking to penalize. The goal here is to encourage you to do as much as you can, or really to work at the pace that works best for you and to fund it accordingly.
Okay. The next question is, hi, when I got hired, the prior sanitarian had a mentor to help her with the standards, but in reviewing what was accomplished, they did 1, 3, 7, and 9. In this case, since I'm joining the RFFM grant program, do I start as a track 1 or a track 2?
It has to do with, do you have a current self-assessment of all 9 standards? And again, you can call and talk to NEHA about that, call your retail specialist and talk about that. Do you have that? And do you have a CSIP? Did they leave you behind a CSIP? They probably did. So you could go into standard 2, and then you're going to want to look at your CSIP and figure out where they left off. I mean, it just depends on where they left off. Joe, do you want to add anything to that? Or Rance, that's a unique scenario.
I just want to clarify that it's the jurisdiction that we're concerned about. If they're meeting 1, 3, 7, and 9 right now, you're track 2. You just need to make sure the self-assessment's current and the CSIP is current there as well. Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether, and if you're new to the program there, welcome to the club. There's a lot of folks who are new to the program right now there. So so that's where, possibly mentor would help guide you through, maintaining what you have, because it looks like you got some great stuff going on already.
I would say call your specialist, although if the government shutdown happens, the program's not changing. We're moving forward full speed ahead. They might not be able to answer the phone, but feel free to call us. We'll be answering the phones during the shutdown. And if you're in that situation where you're replacing someone, sometimes calling the NEHA grant support team, NEHA-FDA grant support team, talking through what you have, where you're going, that can be very helpful, and we're happy to do that for you. And again, like I said, your specialist would be happy to do that for you as well.
Okay. This is just a comment, and this would be more towards the FDA, but more frequent update of the jurisdiction standards of progress would be nice, especially for standards achieved. Currently, it's quarterly, and I think they're talking about the listing of jurisdictions enrolled in the retail program standards and how frequently that's updated. So just a comment. Okay, we did those.
Joe, as you're looking at that, let me just do a real quick tutorial. Here's the NEHA.org retail-grants website. The homepage has a lot of information. It's got the old webinar. It's got registration for today's webinar, which will come down very quickly. And then it's got, if you scroll down to the bottom of this, you've got all of our contact information, how to sign up for a listserv to let you know when updates were made. So that's all important. We've got all kinds of resources on the left. But one of them you really want to be aware of is this program resources tab. If you click on that, this is where you've got the self-assessment verification audit gap analysis tool, which you'll use to work on a CSIP. You've got instructions for a CSIP. You've got contacts for your FDA specialists. You've got instructions for doing a CSIP. You've also got a pretty good up-to-date listing of the training that's available. So a whole lot is available just if you click on the left on that program resources, and then you can go back to the homepage. And again, you've got other resources as well. But that's as you're getting ready to submit a grant, you want to know what the homepage says. You want to see those program resources, and the other key place is really the NEHA grant guidance, and you want to make sure you get the PDF of the 2024 grant guidance. So Joe, with that kind of show and tell a little bit, back to you.
Okay, no, that was a good show and tell, and I think it's important. All right, where were we? Okay, if our FDA retail specialist extended our SA9 due to COVID response, how do we reflect that in the application? The application asks for a date from the last assessment.
I can take that one.
Okay.
You will need to talk individually with NEHA about this scenario. and we can follow up within FDA on the same issue. Okay, so this is a one-off scenario, and I believe that has not been done recently where anybody has been given the COVID exemption. So let's handle you on a case-on-case basis. Reach out to NEHA so that they can address that within FDA. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Beth. All right, so I inadvertently missed Justin Jackson's question, so I will reach out to him and make sure we get him an answer for it. All right, where can I find the information to start the CSIP?
Navigate to the homepage, navigate to program resources. The two things you want to look at are the self-assessment and audit verification summary and gap analysis tool to know what you've done and what you haven't done. And then the comprehensive instructions are going to be found on this webpage link, completing your comprehensive strategic improvement plan.
And you'll also want to reach out to your FDA specialist too. They usually have good information and they have a tool that's pretty comprehensive as well. Okay. And then Jessica was very kind and put a link to that grant CSIP information in for us. The next question is, will the reporting next year be similar to this year's reports where we will have mid-year and end-of-year report and individual reimbursement reports?
Answer to that is yes. You will have you'll have an interim report, which is, as you know, really simple. Just, do you need help? What help do you need? You'll have a comprehensive end-of-year report. Did you meet all your goals? And your reimbursement request you will have, but it'll be a lot simpler for many of you because of the fixed grants. A lot of what we need, we don't need receipts for any fixed amounts, and a lot of what we need for reimbursement will be on your final report because it's going to be deliverables based. But those will be reworked so that they're congruent and like I said, much simpler. But you will have 3.
Okay, and then our last question is about the SA9. So you probably want to read the information on the SA9. For the SA9, who determines who the auditor is for review? The SA9 is your self-assessment of all 9 standards. So,
which means that an auditor isn't needed.
Correct.
It's not like you're auditing a standard itself. Standard 1 through 9 on there.
okay.
Let me say that a little clearer, Rance, make sure no audit is needed for the self-assessment of all 9 standards, but as you meet standards, it's you as a jurisdiction who will hire and choose an auditor. Am I correct on that? Once you're starting to meet standards.
And there are resources available. RFS is a great resource for that, to be able to help if you don't know where to find somebody to do that. They are a great resource for you.
And they're not going to do the audit for you, but they'll point you, they'll hopefully connect you with some people who can.
Okay, so this jurisdiction, working on the standard 9 public health metric, developing custom statistical review for priority and priority foundation risk factors, will compare outcomes from previous year to current year, analyze and develop interventions, acceptable or for report and audit, or is there a requirement to download into the FDA database? As far as I'm aware, and Mary Beth can correct me on this, there's not a requirement to download it into the FDA database at all.
No, there isn't. So what would occur and what you would turn in, or turn in is probably not the right word, but work with your retail food specialist is if you are meeting standard 9, right? And you've done this data, now you're doing an intervention strategy and you're meeting standard 9, you've had it verified, you're going to turn in that paperwork, right, to FDA so that it can be updated in the database. That is what is turned in. But as far as your analysis and what you've done with your individual jurisdiction, there is not a requirement to turn that in.
But if you do use the Food Shield site as your database to be able to input your stuff that's following the same as the FDA risk factor studies there, what's available for you is resources around you showing you how what the other jurisdictions are doing, and how they compare to what you're doing there and things you might be able to use. FDA does not have access to your risk factor study that you put in there unless you actively give them permission. So it's your private thing, but you've got availability of other resources around you.
And Brian says, thank you for that answer. We don't have any more questions. That appears to be the last question. So I'm just double checking here. It appears we do not have any more questions. We're getting thank yous now, so thank you. And thank you, Art and Rance and Dr. Randawa and Mary Beth, of course, for all of your assistance. And I hope everybody has a great afternoon. This will be uploaded into our webpage. And have a great day.
Thank you all.